wanna do, 'cause I'm just a sinking ship, and you're just a pair of lips that I've lost in the moment. All I want is for you to come back. Now I'm caught in the middle of life, and I need
Alex Krainer, how's it going today, my friend?
It's going well, Rashid. Good to be with you again. Thank you for the invite. Greetings to your viewers and listeners.
Alex, before we get into the information on what just took place between Iran and Russia, I had a colleague of mine on the show a few shows back, maybe 2 shows ago, and it was journalist and author Matthew Eric, and he brought up something about you, and he said that you had a different take on what took place in Syria. Because I hear a lot of views on what took place in Syria. I'm not familiar with your view on what took place in Syria. I just want to preface everything with this. As the Syrian president was deposed, a lot of gossip and a lot of reporting was saying that he was unstable, he was this, he was that. None of that came up prior to him being deposed. And I said this: loyalty means everything to me. Loyalty. And Syria was not really the target of the U.S. or Israel. They wanted Iran and they wanted Russia. And Assad stood as a buffer against that. They offered him the removal of U.S. troops if he took Iranian troops out. They offered him being invited back into the fold of so-called Western nations if he allowed a pipeline to go through Syria, and he refused because of his loyalty to Russia and Iran. Even to the very moment, there are more things coming out. I would say gossip about how Assad fled Syria and all of this. What is your take? Because a lot of this stuff I just can't buy, because it is secondhand stuff coming after the man was deposed and after certain people, to me, did not keep their end of the bargain. I know he may say, for instance, let's just say, give credit to all of the gossip that's coming out against him. It still does not delegitimize that they should have stood by him, because he was taking the brunt of the empire for them.
Okay, so here's how I interpreted the Syrian situation. It happened on Sunday, 8 December, if I remember correctly, that his government fell. The insurgency from Idlib started on 27th November. So that's about 11 days. Syria fell in 11 days' time. So that's a bit fast. How many jihadists invaded Syria? Between 20 and 30,000. And they were mostly armed with light weapons on pickup trucks, not even real, armored personnel carriers or tanks, just, Toyota pickup trucks with machine guns and stuff. They were going against Syrian Arab Army, which counts 270,000 troops, or used to count 270,000 troops. 11 days, really? And not only that, they had 8 years, because the siege of Aleppo was lifted in December 2016. So the Syrians had fully 8 years to prepare for this, to reinforce their defenses, to rearm, and regroup their troops. And they knew this was coming. They were warned multiple times by the Iranians, by the Russians. And so the fact that the whole thing fell like a house of cards in the space of 11 days, to me, says that there's something else happened. This wasn't like a military victory. The Syrian army must have been ordered to stand down, because they did. They almost put up no resistance, and not only that, all of it gave in all at once. I mean, 11 days is practically, it's a blink of an eye in those, how do you call it? In those, in context of these events. And then, as you rightly pointed out, all of a sudden we had all these narratives, and part of it was how the Syrian military was very poorly. The soldiers were paid very badly, and the commanders were corrupt, and so the morale was very low, and so on and so on. All of a sudden, we hear this. But I was in the military during the wartime. We were defending our country. We were paid shit. I mean, it's not like we were doing it because the money was good. I remember very well, because we laughed about this, that my monthly salary as a soldier in the Croatian army was good to buy 4 beers out in the city. It bought about a dozen in the military canteen, but we didn't want to stay at the military canteen. We wanted to go out where, like you wanted to go see girls and stuff. And so we wanted to go out. And I remember we used to laugh because we would get our salary, we'd go out, 4 beers later, no more money, and so nobody's there because the money is good. And nobody's going to quit because they decide they're not paid enough. You're in the military. It's a total institution. You get your orders, you obey your orders, you execute. And now, of course, it's conceivable that in some unit, the morale could be so bad that they say, hey, we're not doing this. But usually it'll have to do with commanders being big jerks, with the organization being extremely poor. So the soldiers perceive that they're just going to be wasting their lives for nothing. And then you might get like a mutiny. But if mutinies were reported here and there, I would buy the narrative. But that the whole army vanishes, vaporizes in the space of 11 days, that is impossible. They're just only people who never been in the army, have never tasted war, could even countenance such narratives. So to me, that was immediately that doesn't sound right at all. And it's not like all those soldiers, 270,000 troops, would just change into their civilian clothes and go home with the head choppers coming their way. You're just going to go home where they're going to find you and lop your head off. Of course not. So I thought, if the whole thing came down in the space of 11 days, there must have been an order, stand down, disband. And the only way that could be through the whole country is if the order came from the very top. And if the orders came from the very top, that means that it was a political order ultimately. And that means that it was taken probably by people who largely controlled the Syrian government or had sufficient influence. I also didn't buy the stories about Bashar al-Assad suddenly, all of a sudden being this really, really bad, nasty dictator, because those stories didn't go around until 8th December. Mm-hmm. If there was anything said about Bashar al-Assad on account of his personality, it was that he was a decent man. Mm-hmm. that he was a principled man. And it was the same Bashar al-Assad who stood his ground 8 years ago. When in 2011 he was facing a much, much greater odds against him, because it was not only that there were all these all these jihadi insurgencies attacking Syria that had full support of the Western power, and they had full support of the pretty much the entirety of the Arab League. And this time it's not like that. Syria had an alliance with Iran, with Russia. They were now on very friendly terms with the Arab League, with a handful of exceptions. But the situation was, let's say, the Syrian economy imploded, but in strategic terms, Syria was in a more favorable place. It would have been able to defend itself. So, to my mind, this is almost like, to use a metaphor, you have an edifice which you have to invest a lot of resources to keep it in place, because it's rickety, because it's unsound. And so either you're going to keep repairing it, or you're going to take it down and build something new in its place, demolish it. And I think that between the Iranians and the Russians, they made a decision: let's pull it down. Let's pull it down. Let's not fight this, because I think that the other side, they didn't expect this. They launched the incursion from Idlib because they thought they were going to bleed Syria white, weaken it completely, and then bring a regime change, but keep the country and its political institutions intact. So they would just take it over with some kind of a Juan Guaido or Alexei Navalny, something like this, and then just switch alliances with the West. So like this, they let them take Syria. The insurgents, the jihadis, their ability to fight is questionable. Their ability to govern is pretty much certified nil. And so now they have a big problem. And I think that this was effectively a trap for them, because this was coordinated between the United States, United Kingdom, possibly France, Turkey. And they were confronting Syria, and by proxy, Russia and Iran. Their intention was to get the Russians out, to throw Russia out of Syria, and to overthrow the regime of Bashar al-Assad, but to keep the political structure of society intact.
Right.
And so this all blew up in their face. And my interpretation was that this was a trap. Israel overstretched itself because they couldn't resist the temptation to take a big chunk of Syria, because they extended their control over the Golan Heights. They came within, I think, about 20 kilometers, about 15 miles from Damascus, and they have a strategic position at the height overlooking Damascus, and so they couldn't resist taking that. But Israel is broken. There's no unbreaking Israel. I think that's game over. This is just a headless chicken still running around the yard. And the jihadi groups splintered almost instantly. And now the United States has a big problem, because two very important nominal allies in the region, i.e. being Turkey and the Kurds, are enemies between themselves. So the Turks want to eliminate the Kurds. The Americans want to support the Kurds, but Americans also have an alliance with the Turks, and the Turks are part of NATO. it does appear that the Turks control HTS, but the Americans don't want HTS to rule Syria. The Americans are asking for elections ASAP. And HTS is saying, no, at least 4 years. And so now they had last Sunday, they had on the 11th in Rome, they had this summit for the future of Syria. Well, neither the Turks nor the HTS representatives were invited. So you have France, Italy, Germany, United States, and the United Kingdom discussing the future of Syria, how it's going to go. But HTS, under control of Turkey, has formed a government in Damascus. So it's a complete dumpster fire there. And I think that, ultimately, the West is going to lose this one, because the political and military force that dominates in that region is Iran.
Told you to walk away. That was my first and last mistake. I'm blue without you.